So Tim, what are we cooking up today?
We're going to make some fillets. What those look to be about, what, 6 to 8 ounces?
Yep, right around that
6
range.
or 8 ounces. So I'm going to burn up some fillets for us today.
Excellent,
and,
excellent.
See, we got a nice hot cast iron pot here.
Skills here today.
What do you got for sides there?
Well, I was in Vegas and just a couple weeks ago at Nobu, and they served the shishito peppers with just a simple miso sauce, and they came out fantastic. So I thought I'd do something simple, something quick as a side. Cooking. I'm also going to prepare some yellow squash and some zucchini as well.
All right, so I'm not your Food Network chef, so I'm just going to throw some stuff in the pot here. And
yeah, some oil is usually what I use, and a couple tablespoons of butter, and that'll get going. Ooh. Look at it pop.
Yeah, you got that pan screaming. So I'm going to give that to you. And I know that you season these a little bit, but
yeah, you can pop a little bit more on there as you see fit. Absolutely. I'll get this butter going. Mix that in with the oil. It's going to get a nice crisp on those steaks for us.
Ready?
Yeah. Nice. There we go. I'm just getting some lemon on here.
Want to get a nice crust on these things.
I'll move these to the side.
So I went to, we've got this place that we went to in Ottawa, Illinois. It's a steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever been there. You'll let me know if you have, because if I mention the name, you'll instantly know it. Because if you've been there, you will never forget the place.
Really? What's the name?
So it's a place called Casa Mia. It's a steakhouse.
Okay.
And it's just on the border of Ottawa. So if you Google like Casa Mia, Ottawa, Illinois, you'll find this.
Like the north side of town? Is that 23 that runs through there?
I couldn't even tell you. All I know is we went out there one year to stay in. They've got like these little cottages along a little man-made lake out there that you can rent out. And so we rented one of those for just a way to sort of get away for the weekend. And then we were looking for a place to go for dinner, and we ended up going to this buffet. We're like, let's just go to the buffet. They're supposed to be known for their fried chicken. We get to the buffet, and they're like, do you have a reservation? We're like, it's a buffet. Like,
it's a buffet.
You know? And they're like, yeah.
None required.
Well, here's how good we were. They're like, yeah, well, it's sweetest day. And I'm like, oh, well, shoot, it's sweetest day. Like, we didn't even realize it was sweetest day. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm like, here, honey, we're going to take you to buffet for sweetest day. Well, they wouldn't take us anyway. So I looked on Yelp, and I just like looked around, like what's nearby, and I found this steakhouse, and I'm like, oh, you know, we like steak, and it was me and my partner, and then a brother-in-law and his wife with us, and I said, hey, look, I found this place, Casa Mia. Gave them a call. They can take us. Said if we can get there in 15 minutes, only 10 minutes away. All right, cool. We get in the car. We're driving down the street, and he turns into a neighborhood, and I'm like, where are you going? He goes, this is where GPS is taking me. And we go down the block. We're in the neighborhood, down the block, and there's just houses on each side. Mm-hmm. In the middle of the block, there's a house that has a sign on it and neon lights. I'm not kidding. It's just neon tubes. It says Casa Mia, and it's like blinking and buzzing like the Beetlejuice sign. It's like I looked at this place in the middle of the neighborhood. I'm like, oh, God, guys. I'm like, if this sucks, I'm really sorry. So we park the car, and we walk in, and it's a house. You walk into the house, there's a bar in where the living room would be. The dining room and the bedrooms was kind of opened up. There's only like 10 tabletops in the place. And we sit down, and of course we're like right in the way of the door. So like when people are coming through, they got to walk past us, and we're elbowing each other trying to squeeze in. And there's a little dumbwaiter that brings the food up from the basement, because the kitchen's in the basement. And so the whole time you're sitting there, you hear this dumbwaiter like knocking on the walls, coming up, and then they hit a bell and they pull the dumbwaiter back down, and they're pulling like the most amazing looking steaks out of this hole in the wall.
That's the place I would love to go to.
And I'm like, so like they bring this, they have a Kansas City cut filet. It's a 16-ounce filet. It stands off the plate like 6 inches. They pulled this thing pulled the steak out of the wall, and I looked and I was like, holy cow. I'm like, all of us are going to have that,
Right,
That's their shrimp cocktail.
Cook a little bit. Those are looking delicious. We also clean up? You don't have to clean up, we got you.
I'll clean. I mean, we just chuck the pans out the window and
Oh, yeah.
start
over again?
Because to be honest, so I'm trying to brown up the sides of this a little bit.
I can see that.
Yeah, if we had an oven, we'd have just crammed this thing in the oven, brought them to temperature, done.
We would.
But I think that we're just about done with this because I think any more
No, I think you're
we're
good.
going to be
I'm good here.
might be a little over.
I don't know where this is going to lead.
So we gotta put the good side up first.
Yes, please.
They both look pretty good, so I don't think there is a wrong side.
No, I think we'll be fine. Oh, those look delicious. Now this is just simple zucchini, sea salt, olive oil, and lemon juice. So. Hi everyone, this is Ken Clank with Eat and Drink Real Estate. I'd like to welcome our special guest, Tim Ryan from Real People Realty.
Hey,
Tim,
guys.
thanks for coming. We've got some great food to eat. You're a heck of a chef, I can see that. This steak looks like it's cooked to perfection. And you know, on this show, the guest has a choice of coming into the studio and cooking and preparing food with me, or going to a restaurant of their choice. You were bold and decided to come to the studio and cook.
I figured,
So-
what's the worst that could happen? Because you're going to be eating some charred steak. Or something.
No, it looks delicious. Thanks again.
Yes.
Salute.
So you told me
Mm-hmm.
when we got this scheduled that you had maybe a few questions that we wanted to maybe cover. I think one of them, you'd asked me, you know, if I had any advice for new agents.
Yeah, and that's a very
Yeah.
important topic for new agents. You know, I find it's not just being a new agent, because I find a lot of people get their license, they kind of put their toes in the water, get a feel for real estate, find that they like it, and then they're like, okay, now where do I go from here? How do I ramp this up? How do I segue from maybe the position I currently have that's paying the mortgage to really getting into real estate and make it into a career and make it lucrative for them and successful?
Yeah. And over the years at our brokerage, we've gone through, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agents that had
Mhm.
that same dilemma. And then, you know, when sort of like, you know, COVID came along and everybody had decided that real estate started going crazy, and we got a lot of agents sort of that came into the business in these
Mhm.
last couple of years. We're really going to start seeing whether or not that whether they're able to make it work. And this is a different market than it was back in 2008, you know, 2009.
Well,
Where
that was the
people
beginning of
were-
subprime implosion, right?
Right, and everybody was like, you know, I can't do business in this market. Now we've got plenty of buyers in this market. Now the struggle is, you know, to watch those agents when you're going out with your buyers and you've shown them, you know, their 30th home and you've written 15 offers and you can't get anything accepted. That's where it's going to be. People are going to start having their sort of, you know, epiphany, like, you know, can I afford to stay in this business if I can't get anybody under contract? So I think my advice would be, you know, what we'd always told people when they wanted to sort of make a transition from maybe their full-time career and something else to a full-time career in real estate, because it still is a lucrative career, even part-time.
Mhm.
But to make that full-time shift, we tell everybody save up 6 months worth of your income, 6 months worth
Okay.
of whatever whatever your 9 to 5 is. Save up 6 months of that income when your real estate, and you know, and maybe you're saving that.
Yeah,
up
cover
with
your
real estate
expenses and-
transactions. Put it in the bank, and then go full time. You know, jump into the deep end of the pool, so to speak. My number one advice for any
Mm-hmm.
agent would be answer your phone.
Answer your phone.
Answer your phone.
That's an important one.
If you want to be successful in real estate, you need to answer your phone. Now, my daughter has just gotten her real estate license, so she's, you know,
Yeah.
sort of experimenting with all of this to how can I make a career out of this? And, you know, and that's the advice I told my daughter, you know, save up 6 months worth of your income. You know, when your phone rings, answer it, because, and buy yourself some leads. The easiest way to make your phone ring is just buy leads, right? And so buy yourself some leads in an affordable area. It's going to get your phone ringing, and answer your phone, because the call that you miss that might have been $150.
That could be the opportunity.
$150 out of your pocket that you spent to make the phone ring. You missed the call, and you potentially missed a $4,000 commission. So
Right.
what did you really lose? You lost 4150.
Well, and I think that's an important point that you make, because I know for a fact that if you're not the first person to get back to that person when they're seeking out to find their broker of choice,
Mhm.
hopefully that's you. And if you're not the first one to get back, and what is it? What are the odds? 80 percentage-wise, 85% of people go with the broker that calls them back first.
Mhm.
So they may call one person and they wait an hour or more, and they go, "Well, this person isn't getting back to me." You go on the bad list, they immediately call somebody else, and that person answers the call. Or how, well,
Yeah,
that's one way, but when you say different, what type of different leads are there that they're getting these inbound calls from people?
So you can get leads through, well, there's several different ways that you can do that.
Okay.
Certainly you can sign up for leads from Zillow.
Okay.
You can pay for a percentage of a zip code to send leads to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't afford to be in the zip code that's going to produce, $300,000 to $400,000 transactions, and go into zip code that's going to produce, $150,000, $200,000 transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Get some money in the bank to get your business started. And don't get me wrong, this is a business, so it's not like, you could just, willy-nilly just start trying to do some things, and what works, you keep doing those things. What doesn't work, you stop doing those. But,
Mm-hmm.
it takes some skill and a little bit of attention to really sit down and say, okay, if I were to, let's equate it to a pizza place. If I was going to open a pizza place,
Right.
where would I want to open that pizza place? I could open that pizza place. I want to put it in a place where the demographics are showing me that there's some disposable income, so they can afford to buy my pizza,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you're telling me that you want to make $100,000 a year in real estate, then I would tell you, okay, well, let's look at what different areas can afford you that lifestyle with the least amount of investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I were comparing one area to another area, I'd say, okay, well, this one suburb, the homes are selling for 250 to 300. That's going to give me, a certain average commission back. And I can say, well, if I'm going to spend my time and effort and money marketing an area to try and pull business out of that area, where is that money better spent? It's better spent in the area that's going to produce you, $300,000 sales, as opposed to maybe another, area of
What,
town
the
that's only
smaller
produce,
sales amount.
150.
Right.
So that's just, easy math to do. But most agents don't take the time to think about that, because, of course, if somebody calls me and says, I want to buy a house, I'm going to drive, I'll drive to another state if, I'm going to get $3,000 out of it.
Right. Well, I often ask
Yeah.
real estate broker, where's your primary market? And they're like,
Yeah.
wherever my lead takes me,
Wherever,
I'm going
wherever
anywhere.
the lead takes you. But if you're going to make that investment, and I'm going to market, I'm going to, canvas an area or market an area or pay for leads out of an area, just be smart about it. Like, take your time, think about it. Where am I going to spend that money that's going to get me the greatest return on my investment?
You've got an exciting year coming up next. You're the incumbent president for Mainstreet Organization of Realtors.
I will, yeah. So I served a year. So the way it works.
Now, how does all that work? How do you get to
Yeah,
that
so
point?
the way it works for the executive team, like, first of all, if you want to be on the board of directors for Mainstreet Association, you have to apply. You go through a nomination process. You apply. You sit before a committee that will interview you and select you. So that process alone, it's an honor to be selected for that.
Mm-hmm.
You'll serve a 3-year term. During your 3-year term, when every year the treasurer role opens up, and you go through an election process for that. And when that treasurer role opens up, you actually go around and you campaign to all the members of the board,
Mm-hmm.
and you sort of sell them on why you might be a good fit. Some people don't have to do much selling, because they've seen the work that you've done. They've seen, the value that you bring, and, they'll elect you. I've ran for treasurer twice. The first time I ran up against another person who won over me, and very qualified guy. I was salty that I didn't win, of course, but the guy that Brian that got that role, most deserving, and did a wonderful job. So then I stepped away from the board of directors for a term, and then came back after, well, it was during COVID. I went through the nomination process again, applied again. And so once you sort of win the position of treasurer, then you also have to run for you run for this president-elect, which is the seat that I'm sitting in now.
Okay.
And so, although it's sort of automatic that you go from treasurer to president-elect to president to immediate past president,
Okay.
it's not automatic in that you still have to sort of campaign and win votes.
Okay.
And so, luckily for me, when I went from treasurer to campaigning for president-elect, I went unopposed. So there was nobody running against me. So
they knew who you were. They were terrified.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know. I don't know if they were terrified, but it's also an honor when you do run unopposed that the rest of the board of directors sort of respects you enough that they don't really want to run against you.
Certainly. Yeah.
They're like, we've got the right guy in the right place at the right time. We're going to let him.
No, that certainly is a compliment. I agree.
So it was nice. I didn't have to, go and campaign much during, the running for president-elect. So I'll sit as president-elect for a year, and it's good to have sort of that knowledge of going through the treasurer role too, because it's a big organization. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar organization. There's almost 20,000 realtors
Wow.
that are members of Mainstreet organization of realtors. And although our membership is our priority is taking care of our members, providing resources for our members. Our priority is also homeownership and just keeping homeownership affordable. So we do a lot of lobbying. I'll be in D.C. for the first week of May, and we'll be lobbying the federal government in D.C. To go after any housing issue. So if it's an issue that faces the realtors or an issue that faces housing, we're all in.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in. We support those things, or we oppose those things, or
different
whichever
bodies of legislation and,
Yep.
and things that are being
Yep.
proposed. You
we
for or against? I
we
imagine.
were in Springfield last month. We were lobbying our legislators in Springfield last month, and you wouldn't believe some of the bills that come across the table that you think that the legislators would look at and say, well, this looks great on paper, but don't understand because don't understand what that's going to look like at the street.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand it because really their own experience with homeownership is maybe the one or two homes that they've purchased.
Right.
And so it's real interesting to see that 6,000 bills hit the table, and our legislators are expected to read and understand all those bills and cast a vote on those bills one way or the other. And without really, some of those bills are thousands of pages to read. And so I had one of our, Dan Lipinski, he came to one of our meetings and he says, I just want you to understand, he says, why it's so important to have the realtors at the table. He says, even though we're the largest grassroots organization in the country, he says, when we get all these bills that hit our table, we of course don't have time to read all these things. So there's a college intern that's in the office that's reading through all these bills, sort of telling our legislators what to pay attention to, what not to pay attention to. He says, my experience with housing is the few homes that I've bought and sold. He says, but that college student's experience of housing is nothing.
Right. Zero home
They
bought.
never,
They're still in college for crying out loud.
In college,
Right.
So they're telling they're the ones that are pointing us. So without the realtors bringing their voice to the table, we don't know what this bill's going to look like, or if we even need to pay attention to this bill right
Mm-hmm.
now. If it's a priority and we need to look. He said, so without the realtors coming to the table saying, hey, we need to oppose this bill, and here are the reasons why. We don't know that. We don't automatically know those answers. So that's why being it's a great organization, of course, to be a member of when you're when your career is buying and helping people buy and sell real estate or move real estate. But when it came time to sort of when I stepped away from being a full-time managing broker, I thought this is an opportunity for me to give back to the brand that has allowed me this lifestyle.
Right.
And I think that everybody should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back in, ran for the board. I won a seat back on the board of directors, and then the treasurer role came available. I ran for that role, and I ran against two other people. I won the election for the treasurer role, and then I won the election for president-elect. So I'll sit president-elect until about this time next year, and then I believe it's going to be October when that change happens, and then I'll be sitting president for a year, and then after that I'll sit as immediate past president for a year, and then I get to move on and decide whether or not I want to take higher positions somewhere else.
Okay.
And although it's a volunteer role, it's which makes it even more of an honor because I'm not getting paid to do this, but I'm helping bring that voice to all of our legislators as well as protect homeowners. There's some ridiculous things out there that we've either helped mold or change or
Combat.
combat.
Right.
Some legislator, their kid buys a house and they immediately have some roots in the sewer, and it costs $3,000 to $5,000 to resolve that problem. That legislator then decides he's going to take up the charge of creating a bill that says every home that's sold has to have a $500 sewer inspection where they send a scope down the sewer. And as realtors, we're like, wait a minute. Like, how is that going to make homeownership more affordable? Like, not every home needs that. And we're not saying that maybe that information wouldn't be valuable, but
Right.
the buyer can always negotiate that into the contract. We don't have to mandate that everybody. And of course, who are the people that jump on that bill? Of course, all the plumbers are like, that's a great idea.
The plumbers union is excited.
Yeah.
Sure.
But every homeowner has that right. If they want to negotiate that into their contract, negotiate it into the contract. We don't need to mandate that it has to happen on every transaction.
Right.
When now we just made homeownership more expensive for everybody across the board, when maybe only 10% of the homes will ever have a problem. Maybe. Yeah.
If that. I don't know what
Yeah.
the odds are on it, but
And so we jump on things like that. So that's a real life example of something that happened that the realtor stepped up and said, this is crazy. Why would why would this be necessary? If
Right.
they think that a sewer inspection is important, then negotiate it into your contract. The same as you would for your home inspection or a termite inspection or what have you. So those are the kind of things. So if you're ever interested in volunteering to learn how this whole real estate community works, we've always got committees available that you can participate in. That's a great place to start. Learn how government affairs work and how that relationship works with the association, the realtors, and your local communities. We try to do a lot for these communities, but we're not always a friendly face when we walk in their door because sometimes we've got to stop some ugly pieces of legislation.
right. Well,
They really want that we're like, you don't understand what this is going to do to your market, And so those are some of the things that we do.
well, so it makes sense to me. I mean, again, if you have somebody that really isn't a specialist in real estate, like a licensed real estate broker, certainly with the years of experience that you have, looking at that legislation from that perspective, does it make homes more affordable, or does it make them cost more? Is this really necessary? These blanket proposals that aren't necessary for everyone,
Even
I think need to be combated
Yeah.
and removed.
even proposals where title insurance is involved, or how title is going to be executed, and who's allowed to do it, and things like we weigh in on all those things.
Well,
So-
that's an interesting topic. What is your opinion on, there's a lot of different forms of title companies that we see in some brokerages where they're creating their own entities, whether it's an LLC or captive title company. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's free enterprise. So I think that there's a lot of risk in title, and I think that if a business is going to get into doing titles, that they really should weigh their options. There's going to be a claim can be costly. It could be a claim could be catastrophic to your business plan. But maybe there's some money to be in there. I think everybody really needs to take a good look and decide whether or not that's something that they want to do. But weighing that risk and just my opinion is let the professionals that are in that field do what they do. So I'm all for title companies being title companies, real estate companies being real estate companies. I do know of some companies that dip their toes in both ends of that. And during the time, of course, when we had, there's a lot of fraud that goes in, especially wire fraud.
Correct.
I've got
Very big concern.
I've got a guy that a gentleman that I served on the board of directors with, that his company was in both ends. They got hit with a wire fraud that was in excess of $200,000, which shut them down.
Wow.
And so I think there's a lot of risk in that, and but I think that's something that every business owner needs to really take a look at and weigh whether or not that's a risk they can afford to take, or if that risk can also shut down their other business.
Yeah, it's can be far-reaching, and you bring up wire fraud, and we've been very fortunate with some of the, we go to great lengths, and we've been working with many of the largest banks in our country and listen to their advisors and how to put up extra security measures, which we don't display in the public forum because they are private.
Yeah.
And where, we'll see attempts of wire fraud from 1 to 2 times a week, where we're stopping them, we're catching them, we're not letting that transaction go through. I would be very, very concerned without having that type of experience or be surrounded by those specialists to help put those safety nets in place to prevent fraud from occurring. Because I've seen it, and I've seen it where, especially initially on where the fraud was becoming more prevalent, where you see a homeowner, they're paying cash for a home, and they're saying, we sent the money a couple hours ago, or we sent it yesterday, and said, we don't have it. This is the number that we told you to send it to.
Right.
And their email got hacked. They go, that's not the number I sent it to.
Oh, money's gone.
And the sheer look of distraught, pure terror. They're like, what do I do? That's like their life savings. They may have been downgrading from a home to a condo they can afford. They don't want to do the maintenance on it. They're older. They're not working. They're retired at this point. What do we do?
Yeah.
Well, we jump into action. We're calling the FBI. We're activating every one of our security protocols to track that money down. And by the grace of great systems and great people and good relationships, we've been able to get all that money back in each instance.
Yeah.
But that's not the story for most people.
No.
Because we've been doing this for this is our 25th year doing this.
Yeah.
So, man, I say great caution. Proceed with great caution. It's risk versus reward. You don't know the risk till you see that person sitting across the table and they've lost their money, or maybe you're the one doing a payoff. As a title company, we'll help obtain payoff and obviously pay these notes off. If that goes to the wrong person, you're 100% liable. Those are big issues. So
I had
specialists.
While I was managing, I had a FedEx envelope come to the office with wiring instructions in the envelope. And they came to, one of our realtors. And so we opened up the envelope, we look at its wiring instructions, and I'm like looking at the wiring instructions. I'm like, well, first of all, why would the realtor ever get the wiring instructions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It should never come to the realtor. So it came to the buyer's agent. And so I said, so I go into the transaction, I look up the transaction, I see who's involved in the transaction, and I call up the attorney that's on the buyer's side, and I says, hey, did you get wiring instructions for this transaction? They're like, no, actually, we haven't gotten the wiring instructions yet. It's not really time for us to get them yet. And I says, well, I just received wiring instructions from this title company, and these are the instructions. And she's like, those aren't accurate. And I said, well, give me the phone number for the title company, because of course your inclination is to call the number that's on the wiring instructions.
Which is also fraudulent, right?
And so I was like, you give me the number. And so I called the title company. I was like, hey, we just received a FedEx envelope. They're like, well, we don't FedEx our wiring instructions. Well, you have a problem because I just received these. Not only am I not supposed to get them, but why would they would never go to the agent anyway. I said, somebody is attempting to sort of circumvent the system to get these wiring instructions in front of the buyer to wire their funds. I said, there's a breach in your system somewhere. Somewhere along the line, somebody knows that this transaction is happening somehow.
Yeah, they've ghosted. They hacked.
Yeah.
What commonly we find, and the FBI finds, is that they've hacked someone's email involved in the transaction, and it can be the real estate broker, and often it can be the real estate attorney.
Yeah.
It could be the title company.
We had one where the attorney got hacked. And
we've seen that several times.
The attorney was the title company. Wired the proceeds to somebody. We don't know where they went. He took an email.
Right.
And wired the instructions based off the email that he thought he received from his client. I don't know if that ever got resolved, but that attorney was panicking when he got the phone call. That's like the client's like, I never received my money. That it just so happens that I actually looped one of your guys in, Scott Burgess. I looped him into what was happening with that one scenario, and it turns out that those instructions were fraudulent. And Scott's like, send them over to me, and I'm like, can you pick them up? Like, I really don't want to fax these or email these or send them anywhere.
Right.
So it turns out that they were fraudulent. And that was just another way that somebody was trying to maneuver themselves into the middle of the transaction. And God forbid if we were the ones to distribute those.
Right.
Like we got them. We were like, oh, hey, we got these. Here, Mr. Buyer. This is what your instructions are.
Right.
And we're the ones that handed them over.
Yeah. And so that's obviously, that is certainly, I think, one of the greatest and continually growing in. These criminals are always crafting new ways to try to hack the system and find a way to circumvent things and get people to part with their money. That's what they're doing. And that's one side of it. The other thing that we see that most people aren't really aware of is that what happens when claims occur in a title situation. Well, the first thing that happens is there's litigation. You're going to call this, we dispute this, you guys are responsible, and we'd like compensation for it. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not going to represent yourself. You're immediately hiring an attorney. You're involved in litigation. You immediately start losing money, and a great deal of money, because you're going to hire a good litigator to represent you, and they charge a fair fee for their services, being good and having that great reputation of good representation. But you're losing. Even if you win, you're losing. Thousands and thousands. It
costs a lot of money to litigate something.
At least $20,000 on just a slight argument. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way. We've seen 50, 60, 70,000 and up in terms of litigation fees involved in many transactions. Yeah. Most people aren't prepared for that. And I advise people, well, you're not, we're a title company. We're in the insurance business. And you'll know you're in an insurance business when you get your first lawsuit and you have your first claims. And you're going to, and if you're good, you're going to win, but you've already lost. And if you lose, then it's double. You've lost again. Right. And you can easily be out of business very quickly by not managing those things well or not being prepared for them, having enough cash reserves, prepared, ready for the lawsuits. So that's another cautionary statement. And I appreciate your comment about let specialists be specialists. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be on the real estate side of the transaction because, and that's when when you're just focusing on one thing, you become very proficient at it. You master it. And that's where we feel we sit. And I think that's where, like in your experience, that's where you sit. Yeah. People joining teams and performing different roles on teams.
For the right person, the team is the right way to go. And there's several different sort of iterations of what teams look like.
Right.